Welcome to the Katie Sawyer podcast. I'm your host, Katie, and today we have a guest that works between Massachusetts to Southern Florida throughout his year, the captain of the El Diablo operation, Captain John Galvin. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Katie.
The pleasure is all mine. I'm really excited to have you on. I'm going to preface this conversation with saying that I have very little experience in the Northeast. Just for you, for our listeners, I need you guys to know that I haven't really fished the northern, I guess the Western Atlantic, the Northeastern US. I have had the pleasure to be involved in a handful of tournaments up there. So I've gotten to experience some of the community work and the fishing fleet and see a little bit of the fishing firsthand. So as a result, I've fallen in love with it, fallen in love with everything you guys have going on up there. And I'm so excited to have you on to talk about it. John, can you give us a little bit of an overview of how you got to be where you are today as captain of the El Diablo?
Long story short, um, I grew up just outside Boston, spent summers on Cape Cod in a small little village in the town of Falmouth called Woods Hole, one of the birthplaces of marine biology.
That's a beautiful
Start
town.
started on like most guys, started on charter boats, tackle shops, bait rat, dock rat. Did a little bit of commercial fishing here and there. Worked on head boats in college, and after school, pursued this career full time. Um, Going on 20 years now. It's been a fun ride. Been able to see a lot of places, meet a lot of cool people, catch a lot of great fish. And now currently with El Diablo, we based out of Nantucket, an island off the coast of Cape Cod during the summer and fall months, and our winter operating base is Miami Beach, Florida during the winter, and from there we'll depending on the year, um, we'll venture out from here abroad to the islands, or sometimes we just stay domestic.
That's so cool. Okay, lots to dive into there, lots to unpack. First off, growing up summering in Woods Hole, I went there to check out the institute when we were working for a tournament out of Falmouth.
Hmm.
And I was blown away by that little community. It was beautiful over there. Really cool people, really cool architecture, all around just gorgeous. What was that like? And also, leading into that question, do you have family members that fish as well, that were wanting to get out on the water, that were catching fish, that were working on boats? Do you have any, like growing up, did you have someone guiding you in that space?
It was a very cool place to grow up. My mother's born and raised there. Her parents were born and raised there, and her father spent
Wow.
better part of the 20th century as the superintendent of the Marine Biological Laboratory, which is the
Wow.
actual birthplace of the science of marine biology in 1865. Until then, it did not exist. So spending summers there was very influential in the sense of surrounded by some of the world's greatest scientific minds as it pertains to oceanography, marine biology. Um, and then there's a lot of fishermen too. There was a decent commercial fishing fleet intermixed there at the same time. So I was actually taught how to fish by my mom, and she had some brothers who worked on some commercial boats, but grown, they're a Cape Cod family, so fishing is just like any coastal community, very just woven into the everyday life, whether it's for sustenance, for a living, combination of the two.
Hmm.
Um, there was there was always fishing was always very present, and just being on the water and around the water. So it's a natural progression of life.
It's really cool that there's, your story is founded on both science and the fishing side of the industry, because it's not entirely common. Is it pretty common up there?
Uh, Yeah, I'd say there's quite a few guys I know that ended up pursuing this career after obtaining degrees in science, like myself. So I think it was, yeah. I mean, if you're around that science community around Woods Hole, it's kind of hard not to be influenced by it.
Yeah.
and have curiosities peaked beyond just catching the fish, but kind of, looking to understand more about what they're doing, why they're doing it, what's influencing them from oceanographic and physiological standpoints.
Oh, that's fascinating. And so what did you study in university?
I studied a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And I had two senior years. I was a great student, so we had a victory lap. But I ended up with a degree in focused in natural sciences. But I studied everything from, I think I checked off every box on the elective list, whether it's botany, microbiology, to biology, to ecology, to, I think I took aerobics three times just to get credits. I mean, I got everything, but natural science. I focus in natural science.
That's awesome. And where'd you go to school?
South Bay Regina University in Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay. Gosh,
Another,
I
another
just
beautiful coastal town to
yeah,
spend some time in.
for sure. And I'm a little biased because I've only been there in the summer months, escaping South Texas where you can't even go outside without just the heat is oppressive and combined with the
Hmm.
humidity. And then I would go up there and I'd be like, wow, I can't imagine not wanting to be here. But I'm sure that the winters are pretty hard.
They can be. I've done a good job of avoiding them for the better part of 2 decades now. But now I actually enjoy when I do go home. There's summertime, it's madness in a lot of our eyes who spend time there. It's the greatest place on earth for 3 months.
Yeah.
Um, but then, the winter brings in a different Cape Cod, the locals Cape Cod. It can get quiet and feel rather desolate. But it's also very beautiful, very peaceful.
Yeah.
Um, and there's still plenty to do on the water. There's great shell fishing in the wintertime, and we actually have a very unheralded freshwater fishery on Cape Cod.
Wow,
So
that's
there's things
amazing.
to do.
Yeah. That is so incredible to me. So, once you graduated university, you explored your career in sport fishing, which is where you are today. I know that we spent some time together in Costa Rica back in the m- the mid the
Yeah,
mid-teens.
I think you and Drake were down there the same time I was, like 14. I was there from 2014 into 2017.
It was a lifetime ago.
It sure feels like it.
It feels like it. So, how did you like? So, what were your steps? When did you graduate university? And then what were your step to get to where the job you're on now?
Finished in '05 and packed up a car that following summer and drove to Fort Lauderdale. Had a room to rent from a buddy, and just started pushing wax on boats, doing cleaning, doing whatever it took. The old fashioned pound the pavement, hit the docks type route. And
Why'd you
then
pick
ended
Fort
up
Lauderdale?
that's where my friends were. They were already
Okay,
down there, established, had a room.
nice.
Um,
Might as well. Let's
and when you're
go.
22, Fort Lickerdale's a fun place to be too. Um, and then for quite a few years, bounced back and forth, would go back home for summers and falls to charter fish, commercial tuna fish, um, on the side of charter fishing. Come back south, um, freelance gigs, whether it's in the Bahamas for a couple months. Did one season in Isla, and then just bounced around for a while. Ended up starting my own charter business with the help of a sponsor for quite a few years during the summer months, and we'd haul that boat out, and I'd head back south to wherever the winds and tides would take me on freelance work before ended up in Costa Rica, um, working on the Haruko program. And then,
The OG.
yeah, yeah, we're working with Captain Tyler. And then from there, took over running an operation based out of New York in the summertime called the Blondie. And after the Blondie, I moved over here to El Diablo and been here now for 6 wonderful years. Hopefully for six more.
That's awesome. I mean, 6 years with a sport fishing operation that's long term. That is a long time.
I'm
And I
very
think a lot of
fortunate.
people don't realize all the nuances that go into crew and owner dynamic.
Hmm.
And I'd love to hear you speak on that a little bit on, you mentioned how you hope another 6 years, you're very fortunate. With your experience, I'd love to hear what your intake or what your take is on crew dynamic, ownership dynamic, and finding the right mesh.
At the end of the day, it all starts with personality. Um, that's the biggest one and probably the hardest thing to find is personality matches. And then as it as the program grows, those relationships need to grow together, with some synergy involved. It's You have to understand there is, you're working in close quarters with an individual or a family, or if there's a corporate side to it. So there's, an intimate relationship does develop between ownership and crew. It's important to understand where there are lines, to maintain professionalism and, employer employee with respect to both, and having professional courtesy flowing both ways. Um, as with any relationship in life, communication is huge. Having an open line of communication with your employer, and being able to speak honestly and freely, certainly helps. And mutual respect goes a very long way. A lot of the simple things. Do
Mhm.
your job. I'm from New England, so the old Patriots moniker. Just do your job. Whether it's from the smallest things to the biggest things. Don't cut corners. Um, just do it right. Have maintain an ethical standard that's that you hold high of yourself.
Yeah.
Because integrity is gonna, at the end of the day, integrity and reputation is your greatest tool in this industry. And while 20 years to build it, 20 minutes to wreck it.
Yeah. Oh, so truer words have never been spoken. I feel like it can go quick. I like that you touch on synergy. I think that, it is a relationship. It's just like any other relationship. It takes a lot of work and personalities have to be able to mesh.
Hmm.
Um and I love that for you. We were blessed on our first job to have, I think Drake worked with our owner for 12 years, which
That's
is wild.
outstanding.
I know, I know. And I was there for 9. But yeah, it's a special relationship for sure. And the experiences you get to have together with the people and their family and their loved ones is unrivaled.
Yeah, it's similar. I love though what Anthony and his Bad Company team are doing, and but really comes down to what Anthony. I love how he says, "Die with memories, not dreams." And by and large, sure, we get to do some incredible fishing and traveling, but this job is a hospitality job. It's
Yeah,
entertainment. So
exactly.
it's, a big thing for young guys coming up is even if you're missing out on a hot bite, but you're going to do bottom fishing, the people coming on the boat, the owner's guests, it might be their only time. Make sure it's the greatest goddamn day they're going to have all year.
Preach.
You need to understand that it's entertainment, and it's the hard part is when fishing is slow,
Hmm.
and or if you're doing something that you don't have to enjoy, say, going bottom fishing when there's a hot sail bite here in South Florida, or there's a good bluefin bite up north, but don't look like you're discontented with the owner and their guests on board. You know,
Yeah. No.
Respect
You don't
yourself high enough
I,
to be a professional and take care of the job. And it goes even to when you're back on the dock. You never know who's watching you from afar or from behind tinted windows. It could be your
truth.
next employer. It could be your employer's friend. It could be one of your peers. And peer respect is just as important as employer's respect.
Truth, truth. I love that. All of that. References, you never know who it's going to be. I was
Hmm.
told when I first started in the industry, I remember telling Drake, I was like, I really don't like that guy. And he's like, Katie, you don't know who your next boss is going to be and who they're going to know. He's like, always act like it's your next boss. And I
And the
was like,
same
wow,
goes for your small sample size of seeing somebody who knows what they're dealing with on that any given
truth,
day.
truth.
So, first impressions are important, but sometimes in a small sample size, you may not understand why somebody's short one day. They might had
Yeah.
something else going on. So,
Yeah.
but it still comes down to it. It's a small industry. It takes
Exactly.
1 degree of separation or the Kevin Bacon effect in the movies, and it really puts it under a microscope,
For
especially
sure.
here on the East Coast. And I'm sure
Yeah.
the Gulf is the same way. Each region has its, has its very parochial natures.
Yeah. And I mean, it extends from Gulf to Madeira, like, I
Hmm.
mean, they're all so closely related. It's just like you said, it's a super small industry. And what I really like is that you touched on, if there's a hot bite going on and you need to go bottom fishing, you don't have to be happy about it, but you do have to act like you're happy about it. And
Make the bottom fishing bite hot. Like put
yeah,
the effort in. Like let's
yes.
get on the snappers or get on the sea bass. Like have fun
Let's
with
go.
it. Who doesn't like bottom
Exactly.
fishing?
And then, there's people on board, they're trying to have an amazing time. All they want is to have an amazing time, to enjoy themselves.
Hmm.
All you gotta do is have fun.
A
I
rule I
love that.
had charter fishing and kind of carries over now still is we're in the business of making smiles. At the end of the day, if everybody gets off the boat smiling, whether the fishing's been spectacular or less than ideal, your job's done. You've done your job satisfactorily, and you know people are smiling. That's all that
Yeah.
matters.
And that's job security too, which
Hmm.
is great. That's awesome. Okay, moving on. I would like to hear a little bit about, I know you mentioned that you're, summer, fall months, you're in the Northeast.
Hmm.
Winter is spent in Southern Florida. I'm assuming you're kite fishing.
Hmm.
And then you spend some time in the Bahamas some years, sometimes you don't. What does that what's your crew dynamic? Do you have two mates? You're on a 72 Viking, correct?
Yes, zero mates, zero full-time crew.
You
I'm
have
the only one.
zero full-time crew and you have two
Yep.
boats, don't you?
We have a 72 Viking and a 41 Valhalla.
How how do you have zero crew? Because for me personally, my experience, like, there was no way we could have done. I mean, I'm sure Drake could have, but in my mind, he couldn't have, right? I was vital. I was vital, John.
Hmm.
Could have done 57 foot without a full-time crew, or the 60 foot without at least one full-time crew. Like, how do you do that?
We have we've got some really great mates, guys that myself and them we've been fishing together for quite some time. My good friend Mike Cox, he and I have been fishing together now for 15 years, and I can fly him if we could be in Costa Rica fishing, we could be in the Bahamas. He's a New Cape Cod guy like myself up north, so we've got a few guys that are like all world guys.
Hmm.
Um, where we'll use them in specific regions. And then I've got a great group of subcontractors that help me with the day-to-day maintenance and upkeeping of the vessels.
Amazing.
Yeah, I got two really spectacular uh, gentlemen here in Miami. My friend Leo, my friend Ryan. They they really help out a lot for when I'm gone. They'll look at the boats. They'll tell me, hey, it looks like it was Miami was dirty this week. There's a lot of air pollutants. Like we're gonna give them a bath. Like and it's I have the resources and the ability to utilize the subs and the relationships that I have with various subs to keep the boats, in Bristol condition and always ready to rock.
That's
My
amazing.
employers would also provide me with very, very organized scheduling
Hmm.
as for what their travel to Miami and use of the boats is going to be during the winter time. So scheduling is one of the best luxuries that I have in this program, and that I can line stuff up um, in a very organized manner with the yard, with su- just day-to-day maintenance subs, mates, and then I just fly somebody in for when I got to move the boat, the big one, up and down the coast.
Hmm.
We
How
we make it work.
how much of a sketch, like, tell me a little bit, because I'm very intrigued. One, tell me a little bit about the heads up and scheduling you get as a private boat captain. Two, I want to hear about what makes you able. I mean, obviously you have good relationships with them, but your subs, how are you able to you must give them a good heads up to be able to
Hmm.
rely on them so far in advance, because that's the thing, is finding good help in the moment can be so challenging which is one of the reasons why we've always really employed that whole at least one full-time mate situation.
Hmm.
So how does one
Scheduling wise, it's I might I'll get a schedule every month. Sometimes it may go out 3, 4 months at a time. I know what the use schedule of the boat is going to be. Um, then as for getting the mates, for here in Florida, and a lot of the guys that fish with us, they're fellow captains too. That if they're not busy, every captain would wants a mate and still loves being a mate.
yeah.
So it's usually rarely do we actually run into an issue of putting a good experienced person on deck. And then there's some young guys that we grab too that we really enjoy having. Um, so it's usually not hard. And I'll look at on a given week we'll look at the weather and it'll be all right. We're gonna fish on Tuesday and Friday, and this will be decided on like a Friday, like the Friday before everything. So then
Mhm.
I can put it out there who's available
Yeah,
and who's to come down. And obviously, if it's on the 41, I don't really need a mate if we're fishing that
right.
boat. Um, and then for the maintenance and cleaning, they said the guys they're already omnipresent in the marina, so I trust them in their eyes, and I know that they're gonna take care of our assets just as I would, or if they were full time. Again, it's trust, and they've been helping us out, and we've been working together now for 6 years here in Miami.
That's so
So
cool.
it's trust like any relationship. It's built on trust and mutual respect.
Yeah. And having that pretty consistent schedule has got to be very helpful in that.
That is a luxury.
Yeah, it really
It
is.
helps with my own travel home. This winter it's by and large been 2.5 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So just
Nice.
and then whatever day we're not working, I just whether it's by myself or with someone on board helping me, non-boat use days are just head down, barrel through, take care of all the maintenance, big to small, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, you name it. Start building up the punch list for the boatyard period, and just being
Mhm.
proactively organized and ready for like Viking already knows when our 41's coming in next month, when our 72's coming. They already have the entire punch list, and addendums will be made with, whether it's additions or subtractions, but we're able to really operate at a high level of organization.
That's really that is really spectacular and definitely not something you see all the time in the sport fishing space. Mostly because I do feel like a lot of that, I mean, you obviously have exceptional organizational skills and really good communication skills. You told me you have the gift of gab, which really made me laugh, by the way. I've been thinking about it. But it's good word choice. But also, part of the reason why a lot of people like to own or the owners part of the reason why most boat owners enjoy having a boat is the luxury of being able to use it whenever the heck they want.
Hmm.
So scheduling isn't always that straightforward for
No.
either party and if you are in an operation where it's not like that, that's okay too. I just want
Yeah,
you guys
been
to
there.
feel good. Yeah, we've been there. Jump how high. And in those situations, you obviously would rely more on full-time crew.
Yeah. Well, when I've been in operations like that, we've had anywhere from 1 to 5 full-time crew.
Yeah.
Um, the luxury and benefit of our level of organization and scheduling here, it's like any operation or entity, it starts at the top. It starts with my employers and their organization and scheduling, communicating that to me, and then it's just a very healthy cascading effect down the line.
That's awesome. I love that. Healthy. So good. Okay, let's dive into Nantucket and fishing around Massachusetts. I really, as we touched on, I love that area. It's stunning. There's some pretty exceptional sea floor up there in the
Hmm.
Northeast area, close to land, but also if we go out to the canyons, you've got some really, really cool current movement up there that bring in some really amazing fishing. Can you give our listeners a rundown of what type of species you target in your summer and fall months and what the variations are in that style of fishing?
We target everything from sea bass and flounder to bluefins and blue marlins and everything in between. Um, Benefits of having two boats allow us to fish all pretty much nearly every fishery that's available in New England. Um, I'm biased because it's the home waters, it's the backyard, but it's a pretty special place in that you could go out in the morning, target a giant bluefin, catch it, and then steam out to the canyons and get a blue marlin that night.
That's crazy.
Not many
How long
places
of a
in the
drive is
world.
that? Just so we're clear.
So fishing out off Nantucket, Nantucket's a beautiful sandbar, 30 miles off the coast, southeast of Cape Cod. So it sticks. It's got a strategic advantage on distances. We could be on bluefin grounds within 20 miles of the island of leaving the dock, and then if the water is in the next nearest canyon from that area, and then we could steam 3 hours, 80 miles, 75 miles down towards there'll be hydrographers or Welker Canyon, and we could then that afternoon be in big eyes dolphins, blue marlins, white marlins, yellowfins,
And I mean,
wahoos, you name it. And then
big
in between
tuna.
it all, we can stop and catch cod too.
Yeah.
In between, so you can get a bluefin, a cod, and a blue marlin.
Is that the Nantucket Slam?
Uh
I'm just
no,
kidding.
I don't know what I would call it. I mean, there's an inshore tournament they call Nantucket Slam, and that's more for bass, bluefish, false albacore, Atlantic bonito. We have Cape Cod in general, due to the Gulf Stream and the warm filaments of water that break off. The eddies build our um, water column structure in the canyons, but they also bring in a variety of other fish. We get king mackerel on the south side of Cape Cod. We have Spanish mackerel. We've seen redfish. We've seen cobia. There's tarpon that are reported every so often. Further west by Block Island, cuberas are seen every year. Um, we get a wide host of stuff. Sailfish will show up on occasion. There's no fences and they
That's
all have
wild.
tails, so anything can appear.
Yeah. Does the water have to
Great
be
what?
pretty warm for the sailfish to show up?
Yeah, if the good eddies come in, we'll see 80, 81 degree water.
Wow.
Last year we were fishing some very far east canyons, and we had at one point we were fishing. I think it was a 66 to 80 degree break.
Holy
And
cow.
we were. Oh yeah, we had on our way out steaming out. We'd see bluefins crashing. We saw some swordfish tailing on the southern end of George's Bank in the cold green water,
Hmm.
and then you'd fall off into the blue water in the canyons, and it was blue marlins, white marlin, yellowfins, big eyes, swordfish. But we were far. We were fishing 175 miles each way. Like
That's
we were closer to
exceptional.
Canadian waters than we were to Nantucket.
That
It
is
was
fascinating.
it was just one of those years where the way the eddy came in, it landed up on the 100 fathom curve there with this beautiful cold water falling off the bank, and it just did this slow sawzall west that fortunately could really only be accessed by those with large, fast boats.
175 is far. That is
Yeah.
far to go on a fishing trip. And so when you're going that far, how many nights are you staying offshore?
Depending on conditions, usually just one, sometimes
Hmm.
two, but usually just one.
That's
We'll leave the dock at 9, 10 in the morning, and we'll get back usually around maybe 3 or 4 the next day.
Do you get some pretty quick weather changes up there?
We can, um, not, it's not so much precipitation or necessarily storms like you'd see in Costa Rica during their wet season. But the winds can kick up. Usually that's what we're looking at. If we know that if there's a northeasterly coming,
Hmm.
there's a lot of ocean for a northeasterly to fetch up. And we do have a lot of current, not just with the eddies, but tidal currents that are come moving on and off the banks. Um, but usually, if we get some good Bermuda highs during the summertime, we'll get these good 3, 4 day stretches. It's very similar to fishing the Gulf. You
Yeah.
guys fishing your canyons or rigs, you're looking for the good high pressure systems that are going to be stable and give you, some favorable days to go out.
Yeah. Can you explain to our listener what a Bermuda high is?
It's a high pressure system that's coming in from the Atlantic, in from the ocean, and it's a very stable system where there's not going to be a lot of precipitation. The sky's going to be very clear, and the winds are usually quite favorable.
Nice.
versus low pressure systems bring in some volatility. Um, you know, usually it's a warm front, and it's going to be an occluded front, and there's going to be a lot of precipitation and instability in the atmosphere. So we like those Bermuda highs.
Excellent explanation. Okay, tell me about Nantucket Shoals specifically. You kind of touched on the sandbank, and tell us a little bit about that area, its cultural significance, and what y'all do around there.
Oh, this is the whaling capital of the world. It's a very historic island due to its whale. It was the epicenter of the whaling industry for a very, very long time. Um, and from that, so many different trades were born from its whaling history: the coffee trade, spice trade, obviously whale oil. There was a almost a predecessor to a stock market of sorts with how the whale oil was traded between Nantucket and areas of New York, London, and whatnot. If anybody's there, the Nantucket Whaling Museum is one of the coolest museums you'll ever go to in the world.
It is so cool.
I go
Yes.
once a year,
Oh,
every
that's
year. It's
awesome.
it's fantastic. Um, there's also, there's just a great history and lineage of fishermen there too. A lot of harpooners, whether it's for swordfish or giant bluefin tunas. Um, and then for a long, long time, the Nantucket Anglers Club ran the Nantucket Billfish Tournament, which went on for, I think it was 41, 42 years. Um, and that was alongside also when there was a Cutty Hunk Swordfish Tournament, a Block Island Billfish Invitational. There was this whole, starting in the 60s or so, this whole set, even earlier with some of the islands, billfish circuit. It's, the tunas definitely get the largest praise and fanfare, but we do have some really spectacular bill fishing off of Massachusetts when the conditions allow. We have some very large blue marlin. Um, we can get a great push of white marlin both offshore and near shore, and swordfish as well.
I'm glad you
But
touch
then the
on that.
Nantucket shoals are just a Nantucket's the biggest sandbar, and then as they go south, there's a whole set of shoals that stretch out about 30 miles south off the backside of the island, which bring in just lots of cool water current going down, and then at the bottom of it they'll meet up with eddies, and that's where we'll also see 10-degree breaks, in relatively shallow water, like 40 fathoms.
Wow. Okay, real quick, before we dive into that, I really want to touch on the fact that you said that the tuna get a lot of fanfare in that
Hmm.
area, but you see really good bill fishing as well.
Hmm.
That was the vibe I got when I was working tournaments up there. I it was such a tuna fishery. Like it just seemed like everyone was so into the tuna fishing and often actually saw the marlin as, I don't want to say bycatch, but like almost that. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like they were so involved with the tuna that the marlin were just like a way to get a couple points and then, let's
A
get a
lot of them,
tuna.
it's bycatch is like a harsh word, I guess, to
I
use
know,
for
I
them.
didn't like it, but
It's more they're not targeting them, so I guess it is bycatch. Um, and the tuna fishing, whether it's yellowfins, big eyes, or bluefins, or sometimes a combination of the ball, longfin albacores, or we haven't seen them in quite
mhm,
some time. When the tuna's going off, I think it's arguably some of the best tuna fishing you'll ever see in the world. A single day with 15, 20 yellowfins, 50 to 100 pounds, and a dozen big eyes is not uncommon for an afternoon. Like
yeah,
you're
which is
deck
crazy.
loaded, you're done.
Yeah.
Um, but the bill fishing is pretty spectacular, and
Yeah.
sometimes I mean, I've had days where we've had going back some years when my buddy Damon and I were fishing together on his boat. We had some overnighters. We saw 7, 8 blue marlin trolling, targeting them, and everything was
Yeah.
all 300, 400 and larger.
That's
Um,
amazing.
there's been boats, guys would go out and you can land on a pile of whites in the canyons or just above them on the flats, and you can have a 25, 30, 40 bite day.
Yeah.
But it's
That
all year to year. Everything's so,
current dependent.
yeah, it's so, and whether it's where the eddy's coming from, how long it
Mhm.
stays for, does it set up? We can get into the science nitty gritty of it. Is it cold core, warm core, and that's how, whether it's going to create an upwelling or a downwelling.
Mhm.
But when the conditions are right, it's on par with anywhere in the world. You just have to
And
run far.
yeah. I just like I was blown away, and I don't even think I said this part, is that while these people are fishing for tuna, I'm getting all these marlin reports, and I'm like, "But what about the marlin? Like, you guys don't wanna put some marlin spread out?" Like,
I think
but
I think for a lot of people, the window for your average recreational fisherman up there is so small. It's really, call it 2 months if they got wife, kids, summer vacation. So they effectively have 8 weeks, and get on a given year, you might not get some great weather. So they're going to try to capitalize and, put meat in the boxes as much as possible if they're only going to get one or two trips, three if they're lucky. And I
yeah,
think it comes down to if there's targeting billfish is definitely a bit more finesse and, you know, I don't want to say skill, and because that's taken away from the people who are successful
yeah.
at
Good at
targeting
tuna
the tunas,
fishing.
but
Mhm.
it's a different game.
Yes.
To each fishery respectively, there's different skill sets involved. Um, blue marlin, one thing, you just have it pile on and hang itself. The whites become a little bit more, I'd use the word persnickety,
Yeah,
because
it's a good one.
they will drive you nuts.
Yeah, if you
Whether
don't
you're
have
a novice or an expert, a
if
white
you don't
marlin
have
will.
issues with white marlin, then you
I
haven't
think
fished them
that's
enough.
probably my preferred billfish to fish for at home, simply because of they can
The
be
challenge.
so goddamn frustrating.
They're so frustrating. And it's funny because so my professional career started in the Pacific, where we don't have whites, right? So
You
striped
got
marlin and
stripes, which is like a
in
white on steroids.
well, okay, well here's the thing, John, is I thought that they were essentially for more or less the same-ish thing. And I got
Taxonomically, they are. They're in the same genus, I believe.
yeah, but they do not eat the same.
No,
Not
no.
at all. I got really good at striped marlin fishing in Baja, obviously, right? Because there's so many, you get so
Hmm.
many chances, and you really start developing a relationship with a striped marlin. Obviously, every fish is different, every day's different, blah blah blah. But for the most part, you can really identify key attributes of feeding fish and how to hook them and how to fight them and all the things, right? And how
Hmm.
to read the energy behind the spread. But then I went over to the Gulf of Mexico and I was helping some friends out on one of their trips. And I mean, I got sunk by a whitey. I was like, who am I even? Like existential
Hmm.
crisis over here. And Drake was like, Katie, it's a white marlin. Like, if you don't have issues with a white marlin, then you just haven't fished for them long enough. And I
They
was
can embarrass anybody.
yes,
They're
gosh.
and it's funny, they'll drive you nuts when you're using the correct tackle for them. And then out of nowhere, you'll have a 40 pounder will pile on to a 13, 14 inch lure with a 12-aught hook in it and gets stuck immediately. And you're just looking at them like, but then
Really?
you can't get a little dink ballyhoo to go down its throat.
With 6 on hook.
Yeah, but
That's so funny.
they're beautiful fish. They're challenging. We get the whites. We do see round scales too.
Oh,
We tend to
cool.
see the round scales further offshore. In my experience, we don't see them mixing in too much with the nearshore
Oh, that
uh,
is
white
interesting.
population.
Mhm.
Um, our whites are different too in size. The ones in the offshore and the deep water and the canyons tend to be more of your classic white marlin size. Your call it 40, 50, maybe up to 70 on a big one. Whereas in our closer near shore waters, near shore, I'm saying like 30, 40, 50 fathom, we'll routinely see them, 100 to 130 pounds. I mean, world record class size fish. There was actually a junior world record, pending junior world record was set last year, behind Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. A young kid got a 118 pounder.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Hmm.
Um, do you think it's a different population of fish?
In theory, and I'm going to try to figure that out with the Skillie Project that I co-founded with my friend Matt Rissell last year in conjunction with the Billfish Foundation, University of Maine. Um, we've got a great team of a couple other private programs, one called Scop Slayer, one called Riptide, and got a whole bunch of satellite tags. We put a few out last year. We got a full quiver this year, and we do have some of us do hypothesize that they could be a different migratory. body of fish, but even genetically too, because they're so consistently large.
Mhm.
And they're also spending a lot of time in pretty cold water. We see them from 66 to 70-degree water. And it's very chlorophyll rich. It's green, but it's clean green, but it's
Okay.
not water that you would normally consider finding a billfish in. Like they're mixed in with bluefins, I'll put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. And
And I've even
so
had them mixed in with like offshore schools of striped bass.
that's insane. I'm like trying to wrap my head around that, really. The okay, you kind of just gave us a little glimpse at the Skillie Project, but tell us a little bit more. First off, can you please explain to our listeners, because I didn't know this, what is a skilly and why does it have that name?
Skilly, it's short for skilligalee, which to my knowledge is a Portuguese term, slang term, that was regionally applied to white marlin. Um, they used to be targeted as practice by swordfish harpooners when they couldn't find swords. They would just go around plinking the whites. Um,
That's so New England.
yeah,
That's so old New England.
kill everything. Um, Nobody's shaved buffalo for us or whales. Um, so skilly's an affectionate term for them, but it's if I as soon as we get into the canyons, into the deep blue water, we'll just call them a white.
Hmm.
When we're fishing
That's
for them in the near
interesting.
shore, colder water, we call them skillies. Think of their behaviors a little different. They're a little bit more, they can be a little bit more docile. Same species, different size, different water depths. So for some reason, we give them a different name.
I love that. Is it I'm just fascinated by this concept that one, they're going in so close to shore and so shallow. Two, they're mixing with the species like bluefin and didn't you say bass?
On rare occasion, I've seen them shallow enough where they've mixed in with bass. But you will, anybody that's fishing behind Martha's Vineyard or Block Island or Nantucket in bluefins, more often than not, when they're getting phantom knockdowns, if there's no weed on their hooks and they don't see the small little detonation that a school tuna does,
Yeah,
it's more than likely it's a white marlin back there. And
that's wild.
it could be more than one too. You know, many sometimes we will see them in two or three fish packs
Yeah.
near shore, larger schools offshore.
So you mentioned that previously fishermen used to use them for harpooning practice,
Hmm.
but that's no longer the case,
No,
right? Like, what is the cultural significance of the skilly to today's fishing population?
it's the skilly fishery has long been a self-preserving fishery in that it's not a secret, but there's secrets in doing it consistently and effectively, and a lot of that has been passed down really orally from guys who started the fishery because they all, at one point in time there were quite a few world records held out of the area. They're still around. They're friends' fathers, so a lot of
Hmm.
us learned from talking with our friends and our friends' fathers and guys of their same age. So kind of like old-fashioned oral history. The techniques and styles have been passed down how to do it effectively and consistently, and it's so dependent on physiological and oceanographic conditions that you can have a 2 or 3 year stretch where we'll see some good numbers of them near shore,
Hmm.
and then there might be 5 years where we might see one, maybe two in a trip if we're lucky. So the aim of the Skilly project and the satellite tagging is to try to crack a little bit more of a code of where they're coming from, where they're going, and what other factors in the environment are leading them in here beyond what we already know. What are,
Which
some
is,
secondary or tertiary level. First and foremost, it's water. We need warm water. Filaments push in, and then, as they get pushed in shallow, a thermocline comes up higher, and we've theorized that they kind of get trapped by the thermocline, but they will actively feed. So they're not really trapped. Um, Winds play a big role, just like a lot of fisheries. Certain wind directions can effectively, not fully shut them down, but make them feed, less aggressively. even though they're not really aggressively feeding to begin with. Um,
which is
so it's in
interesting.
trying to figure out, they're so large, and white marlin, like most species, females are the largest within the species. So if they're, why do we have this large correlation of females in shallow? Is it
Hmm.
a pre-spawn? Is it a mating site? Is it a post-spawn site? Um, what, is there more consistent time even outside of the water temps and physiological stuff that's bringing them in? Do they come in earlier? Do they leave later? Do they leave earlier? Is it, you know, is what we know only like on the surface of it? And is it actually something that's far more significant to fisheries management, science, and just understanding them all, which leads to more robust fisheries eventually if we can manage it properly? Are they, where's their migratory pattern compared to the smaller ones? Are
Yeah.
they, are they staying in colder water? Are they fall? We know they fall back into the deeper water, but are they going back south? Are they going southeast? Are they going east? There's a lot of, you have a lot of hypotheses, some of
I want
them.
to hear some of your like now before having the data. Now that you founded the Skillie Project and you're gathering the data, I'm sure that's so exciting. And we'll get into that. But what are some of your surely you and your predecessors must have developed some theories of what these fish are doing and why?
Hard to say whether if there's a mating or breeding thing going on. That's just kind of a thought for me, that if there's that many, a consolidation of females, there's no males. So is it actually is it like a post spawn site?
Hmm.
I would like to see whether, there are instances of white marlin going transocean. The TBF recently got a tag back of a fish that was tagged in Portugal, and a year later was weighed at the White Marlin Open. So that was one of
Oh
the
my
first hard
goodness.
evidences of a transatlantic migration. Let's get back to tails, no fences, currents. Any fish can
Yep.
realistically move, but hopefully, you know, between this year and subsequent years, if this is something that does happen actively, maybe we'll be able to further prove it.
Hmm.
Um, but also to see where they go from here. How far south do they travel in the winter? Are they going into the Bahamas? Are they coming down here off Florida? You guys have white marlins in the Gulf.
Hmm.
Are they doing something similar to bluefin, in that if there's western stocks and eastern stocks of white marlin, is where are the wintering grounds, whether they're spawning or not for them, and then same goes for the eastern Atlantic, and is there mixing much like the Atlantic bluefin populations?
Right. So I had a podcast with Chloe Michaels earlier this season, and she was talking about the Black Marlin Science and
Hmm.
project that she's working on out of Tropic Star this year with the Guy Harvey Foundation on behalf of Stanford University. And she was talking about how we just don't know anything about Black Marlin. We know so much about bluefin tuna, and the more we know, the less we know kind of situation. Like
Hmm.
already with all the money that's been put into bluefin tuna science, we've been able to see an incredible bounce back in different populations, which is so amazing. But it just showcases how much we still have left to go when, all the answers to questions really just raise more questions. And so diving into Black Marlin and talking about how there's just not a lot of science out there that supports Black Marlin knowledge, their spawning grounds, their migration patterns, their sexual maturity, their growth rates, all of that. Is it the same for white marlin? And what is the significance of this specific project in collaboration with the Billfish Foundation?
I think it is the same. It is, the Billfish Foundation stated it's their largest consolidated effort, uh, not just with white marlin, but also like a singular species satellite tagging. Um, you know, so many of us tag with spaghetti tags already, but satellite tagging brings so much great hard data, and the best data is done with volume, and satellite tags are expensive. So thankfully, we've had incredible support from the industry to procure. We have 14 tags we're going to put out this year.
Amazing.
And we thanks to
That's a big
Viking.
deal.
Oh yeah, I mean it starts with Viking, Valhalla, Yeti, Costa Del Mar,
Nomadics.
Okuma, Nomadics. I mean, there's so many, real industry titans, ones that, have always supported endeavors such as this. But for them, they came on so quickly last year, along with obviously the boat owners um, that are in the program, allowing us to, utilize these platforms to get these tags out. Um, it's it's going to bring a lot of light, I think, to this species, and hopefully this, in a perfect world, I'd love to see it expand to other white marlin fisheries because there is, they do support a lot of East Coast operations. Ocean City, Cape May, um, Virginia Beach, the Outer Banks, their whole migratory patterns. And, their Ocean City knows that usually their best fishery, a lot of the guys love to fish in September for them. So are any of these fish sliding down there? At what
Yeah.
point are they leaving here, going there, or some bypassing it and ended up in Virginia Beach? So there's the significance is going to have a socioeconomic effect for the East Coast of the United States that have fisheries that have a lot of white marlin frequenting them. Um,
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. So let's talk about the socioeconomic impacts of a project like this and the broad term, the long term projected expansion to white marlin as a whole of this project. What is the socioeconomic impact and why is it important?
I think it falls under the umbrella of all recreational fishing, and it's such a economic engine of an industry when you look at coastal communities that have strong recreational fisheries, inshore, offshore, tackle shops, charter boats, rental houses, lodging, restaurants, fish markets, airplanes, Ubers, taxis, you name it. It truly is trickle down economics, um, in effect, in a positive way. And so many of the operations, especially on the private sport fishing side, we move from many of us will travel spot to spot, so that economy is getting transferred from one to the other. I mean, marinas, dock staff, I mean, you name it. You can go from the macro to the micro. That
Hmm.
it's I wouldn't say it's just skillies. It's the economic monster that is recreational sport fishing from the professional side all the way down to the weekend warrior. Getting out a few times in their boat, or the people traveling to a place to get on a charter boat or head boat.
Yeah.
That
So if some
it sustains entire communities up and down the East Coast.
Okay, so if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, man, okay, so you guys want to tag these fish so you can understand them better so that you can follow them and keep catching them? Like that, what if that mindset's coming through in in a way, yes, that is a large part of it, but it's so much more than that and so much deeper and
It's
more
preserving
emotional than
them.
that. Exactly. Can you expand on it?
They're a highly migratory fish, so they fall under ICAT, much like the tunas and sharks do. So, and we've seen bluefin tunas management is a testament to the long haul of when conservation does work right without impacting user groups too much in terms of fisheries management. And, that's a whole nother table of discussion in terms of fisheries management and all that, that can get very emotionally charged depending on who's sitting at the table. But
Mhm.
if the white marlin are in fact going into other international fisheries, there are plenty of fisheries where there are nations that are not using as stringent conservation measures against both recreational and commercial fisheries like the United States do. So by unlocking potentially a mixing of this stock where it could be susceptible to less stringent longline practices, purse seining, gill netting, you
Mhm.
name it. And
Yeah,
every nation has its right to develop its own economy and fishery, but
of
we
course.
also want to be able to properly manage it to preserve it here because of its recreational economic impact. Obviously, outside of Hawaii, you can't sell billfish commercially in the continental U.S. So there's a lot of trickle down, secondary, tertiary, you know, positive effects that will come from unlocking some more information about these fish. And if it does
Exactly.
work, it could be a model in that the Skillie Project is completely privately funded by industry partners and individuals. There's
Hmm.
absolutely no grants involved in any of this. We have
Yep.
fundraised, I mean, whether you want to call it private equity research or not, we've done it all independently. And I think it potentially could, who knows, if it has the success that we all hope it will, maybe it's a model for other species and other fisheries, utilizing
Hmm.
collaboration with local communities with respect to their involvement with fisheries that are so near and dear to them. Um, really is helping make it go. It's not isolating and pushing out. We're coming in. This is what we're doing. It's we need the collaboration and help of the local communities, and we want to support them as well. So a lot of some of our other sponsors and partners are the local tackle shops like Nantucket Tackle. There's Fish Northeast. There's um, you know the Nantucket Boat Basin. There's all these local ones that they share an interest in this project because they have direct benefits to themselves, their communities, their employees.
And the long-term sustainability of the species.
Exactly.
When you
First and
say the
foremost, the
fisheries,
fish is the species is the star of the show. So the white marlin,
exactly.
ultimately we want to see it get better understood so we can be better conserved and managed, and hopefully, much like the bluefin, maybe we see the fisheries actually grow and explode and become even greater than they already are at times.
Right. I mean, from knock on wood, from what we see, as far as I know, we have an incredibly healthy fishery. We've already talked about that,
Hmm.
and I really like, that you've touched on a handful of things here from the beginning of this conversation. We've talked about how um, being on a boat is about making dreams come true, and about the emotional connection to yourself and the people and the creatures around you out on the water, and that's extremely valuable. And we talked about how there are tournaments that are up and down the east coast of the United States that are huge socioeconomic drivers,
Hmm.
huge economic drivers, and very, very big in the entire culture of recreational fishing in the United States. We've talked about the various fish populations that we're seeing, and we're seeing that they are healthy. But what I really like is that you said the fish that are near and dear to our hearts. And I think that showcases a lot, and I want to dive into that even deeper with you. I want to talk about like looking into it for listeners that might not be fishermen or that might not have experienced time on the water, that don't understand, like from the outside looking in, don't understand the emotion that comes from catching a billfish or targeting and successfully releasing a billfish or even tagging a billfish, like that's a whole different thing. For the listeners from the outside looking in, what is it to have a species near and dear? You know what I mean? Like, what is that, like, on an emotional scale? What is that to you?
Um,
And what caused you to found the Skillie
I
Project?
mean, they're all near and dear. A lot of different people ask, "What's your favorite fish to catch?" The next one. Um, they're all fun in their own right. There's some eat, sleep, and breathe giant bluefin tunas, and don't get me wrong, I love those Atlantic freight trains. But
They're fun.
the white marlin for me has just that's one I associate. I like the challenge. I like the finesse nature of it. There's a definitely a team effort, especially if you're teaser fishing. There's everybody's involved. You can't whether it's the novice on the rod to the guy driving or everybody in between. There is a total team effort, and that's kind of the win together, lose together type mentality. So there's when success happens, you know, success is just the what's the equation? I'm drawing a blank. preparation meets opportunity.
Mhm.
Um, that's
I've
for
always
me.
thought that was luck.
Yeah, but
Luck
luck's good.
and success are
I'm
not
Irish, so
are
I
the
don't believe
same.
in luck. It's all created. Or you're just born with shamrocks.
There you
Um,
go.
I think it's everybody has their near and dear fish. White marlin happens to be it for me. It came about in a very organic way, and my friend Matt, who's the other co-founder, he's a videographer, photographer, cinematographer, all sorts of offers, and we were talking about just wanting to make a fun kind of movie a la Bruce Brown, Endless Summer, with a little bit of spaghetti western, kind of like
Okay,
not a
I love
spoof,
it.
but like a in the word, along the lines of your Flip Palettes, your Jose Wahebis, your classic real fishing movie short film that would encompass everything from the start to finish, all the emotion involved in it. And we're going to tag anyways. So I reached out to Peter Chibonzai and Ellen Peel at the TBF and just threw a flyer at them of, hey, you have any satellite tags? This is what we've got going on up here, and I'm just kind of curious. And that snowballed really quickly to what's now the Skillie Project, the Healy family
Really
and Viking
quickly, like
Valhalla, like 8 weeks.
that is insane.
And then
Like
we ended,
huge congratulations. That is amazing.
all the pieces fell into place. It's a lot of it. There was a lot of serendipity involved in how it all landed and ended up organized to where we have, you know, all the right people ended up in the positions they should be in to make this work. From Peter and Ellen to, supporters like Costa, Viking Valhalla, the Healy families, some of the private individuals from TBF. The Mid Atlantic 500 in New Jersey Cape May event is supporting us up here as well. There's just,
Awesome.
just industry support because they want to know, we're potentially sharing some of these fish.
Hmm.
Um, and then Dr. Walt, his team at University of Maine's Pelagic Research Lab has been killer with procuring the tags once we received funding, getting them rigged up and putting them in our hands. Last year it happened rather late in the season just because of how quickly we were trying to get organized. But 5 tags were deployed. There should be some information coming back, I believe, by the end of the month is when terms will be reached on the tags. And then
That's
now we
cool.
have an
So
additional 14 for this season to put out.
are the tags, are they 10-month tags?
8 months, I
Hmm.
think it was 4 8 months went out and a 12 month
Hmm.
went out.
Nice.
Um, so the 12 months that one will be at Liberty More. So we should see four should begin transmitting some data here soon.
That's awesome.
So it'll be a
I
nice start. And then hopefully if we get 14 out this year, if 14 can go out, not necessarily all of them will end up full term. That's just the nature of it.
hmm
But if we can if we bat 1,000% and 14 get deployed and go full term, I think that's really going to give us some pretty cool data.
That's gonna be really cool. So let's talk about that. I broke down with Chloe in season one what type of data is gathered from a satellite tag and how it works. But can you tell me? So if y'all are interested in diving deep into that, go check that episode out. But if you can, you tell me what exactly y'all are hoping to get from these satellite tags?
Obviously, active migration route, where it goes post tagging. Does it stay or does it beeline somewhere immediately? How deep is it going? We want to see the vertical migrations. They are a diurnal fish, so we want to see what they're doing during the daytime, during their active feeding hours, and then obviously what they're doing at night. Um, the tags will also provide us with what's going on in the oceanographic environment around them. When they're diving to different depths, what are we seeing for water temperatures? How fast they're going? Um, how there's a lot of small bits of data. For me, I want to see where they go. I've got
Hmm.
I've got I've got some ideas, and I really want to see with some data where these things go. I have a feeling that we're going to see that not just there's been similar instances with whites and blues that have been individually tagged over the years with sat tags, ending up in places that you really would never expect to see a billfish. And I have a feeling that it's going to be something more common than ever realized before. I have a
Oh, I'm
feeling that
excited.
I have a feeling we're going to see some of them going up to higher latitudes than we would realize while following currents, is my theory. But it's where they
That's re-
go, they're out well outside of the currents where we're tagging them near shore. So it's what feeds them back into it. And, are they staying in particular gyres or eddies, or are they, getting off highway exits and jumping into other ones? How are they migrating?
yeah.
Is my
Oh, I
big
love that.
theory.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
I'm so
Hopefully we get them
excited.
all out. Once data is compressed and presented, there'll be, everything's going to get peer reviewed as
Hmm.
we gather enough data and volume to discern patterns. Um, and there's other groups, I know Woods Hole has been doing some of their own satellite tagging on both billfish and tunas. Um, and then IDFA does their satellite tagging race. I think it'll end up being the whole community will eventually come together because I think combined we're gonna see some overlapping situations
Yeah.
with time. As I said before, good data is volume, and that's the most important thing is we just need to get more out. But I don't believe nobody, to my knowledge, is tagging the species specific with the amount of tags that we have. A lot of them are more, we'll put three out here, two out here. I mean, Anthony and
Hmm.
Bad Company, he's putting a bunch out for IGFA. Um, So I think it's good that we've got a couple different groups of us independently tagging specific species of billfish with these highly technological tags that are hopefully going to unlock a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. That's
Like I
exciting.
said, maybe it leads into, I'd love to see it expand into other white marlin fisheries on the East Coast to further um, confirm patterns, corroborate other theories other scientists may have, and then maybe we move it into New England blue marlin or big eye tunas. Some of Walt's University of Maine studies with yellowfins in the Northwest Atlantic has shown that they actually migrate to West Africa. A bunch of them. It's one of the
Isn't that
more highly
wild?
migratory populations of yellowfin.
I mean,
You should
that's
get Walt and his Sammy, who with the Skillie Project on. They have some really wild tagging data. Not just with billfish, because they've done giant bluefins. We've tagged yellowfins and big eyes for them. They're doing blue marlin and sailfish in Costa Rica, and they're tagging swordfish with sat tags. They've got some wild revelations of a lot of species. But the Northwest Atlantic yellowfins, a lot of them pretty much almost go straight to the west coast of Africa.
that's a massive that's a massive transit. That's the entire ocean basin
And I had a
and
theory I had
more.
asked Walt, and he somewhat corroborated it in that we don't see big streamers often, even on our larger yellowfins, because
Yeah.
if they're migrating so hard that
They're
that
sickles.
that they get burned off.
What?
Yeah.
Because I've noticed that. Okay, whoa. Okay, let me just rewind a second because that's crazy. In the Pacific, when you look at tuna, yellowfin tuna, ahi that are being caught in Hawaii, for example, they have these
Hmm.
crazy long sickles. And that's what you're referencing,
Yeah,
right?
and like you
Because
guys
I've
in the
always,
Gulf get them where you have a lot more that end up smaller fish with larger sickles. I've seen fish off New England. We've caught 110 pounders, and we like you're looking at it like it's a yellowfin, but it's got short
yeah,
secondary dorsal and
sickles.
ventral
Yeah.
fins. So we'll pull the liver to make sure it's not a big eye
Bluefin.
with a small eye. We used to jokingly call them yellow eyes.
Okay, on that note, when we were in the Canary Islands, we had Robbie from Tag a Giant Foundation with us
Hmm.
there, tagging bluefin tuna with us. And he was talking about how a lot of times you actually can't tell the difference between big eyes and bluefin without actually looking at their liver.
Because they're
Your experience,
smaller.
because they're smaller, exactly. So your experience in the Northeast, where you're having, because we had only big bluefin tuna over there. That's all we were seeing. And where you've got all sorts of different size tuna. What are your thoughts on that? And like, can you expand on it for me a little bit?
It's for up here. It's more some people have will catch a large yellowfin that doesn't have sickles, and they'll think it's a small big eye.
Hmm.
Um, and to really the untrained eye, that's it's you know it's an ignorant mistake, but I don't use ignorant in a
Negative
malicious
term.
way, negative
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
It's just they just don't know truly what they're
Lack of
looking at.
knowledge.
So you can
Yeah.
pull the liver, and the differences between them is whether one's got striations or one's smooth.
Right.
Um,
But that can be problematic if you've got certain regulations put in place on one species and not the other.
yeah, with the yellowfins and big eyes, but there's no recreational limit on big eye tunas, and yellowfins you're allowed three per person.
Hmm. That's a lot.
So if you've got six people fishing on the boat, you've got 18 yellowfins. And if you
Yeah,
get
that's
18 yellowfins and 18 big eyes, I don't care what the livers look like, you've had a hell of a trip. And it's
yeah.
all going to taste good too.
Yeah, and you're probably on your way home because the boat's about to sink.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fish.
But we do see
Oh,
some
that's
of the big
funny.
Allisons too. We caught one
Hmm.
on El Diablo a few years back that was it was 135 pounds. Streamers went all the way to the tail. It was a really
Interesting.
and that season there were quite a few others caught too, and some guys had seen some New York boats had some upwards of like 200 or more. So we do see them. I know longliners do get them way offshore of our canyons,
Hmm.
and I mean that comes down to that's definitely a different migratory fish than the ones that we've tagged and go to Africa. So are they staying
It's
more
just so
regional?
interesting.
I theorize that a lot of the Gulf of Mexico fish grow the streamers because I don't think they're leaving the loop current or
Hmm.
not often.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it could be another sat tagging project to figure out. We're on our own. We're going to put a sat tag in a big eye this year too. A nice, healthy big eye, which is normally they don't get released into the water.
Yeah. Because they're
So be
so
curious to
good.
see. Walt and I would like to see where a mature Northeast big eye goes. We know big eyes do not do transocean migrations; they do north south. But we try to see exactly
Interesting.
how far it does go. I wonder. I don't think they're going to migrate too crazy far because I mean, they're down deep, endothermic fish, just like swordfish. They don't care about sea temperatures as much, but they do definitely migrate. So are they going down, just into you know, the slope sea off the Hudson like bluefins do? Or are they going further down off the Outer Banks? Because you see some of the guys that the bluefin fisheries in the wintertime there do catch big eyes as well.
Am I right in saying that we as a community, as a fishing community, I know this is what I thought, but as a fishing community thought more or less that's what sailfish and white marlin did as well, migrate north to south and not transatlantic
Yeah,
up until that
I
one
think for
fish was
sure with the
caught at the White Marlin
sailfish.
Open.
I think sailfish for sure. I couldn't speak on tagging studies of the Atlantic sailfish, but those are
Hmm.
pretty well known that they go, mid-Atlantic and then go down to Isla
Hmm.
where they primarily mate and spawn in the wintertime. White marlin, I just think have been understudied, overshadowed by the blues, by their big cousins.
Hmm.
Um, so that one, I think they were known to or theorized, or there were some small instances of them going transocean. But this white marlin fish, the fact that it had a tag that was deployed in Portugal, I believe it was a year prior, that's hard data. That cannot be refuted. Now,
It's so wild.
is it one of those things where tails, no fences again, and of course they can go there? Or is it a prelude to something that hopefully maybe we're going to be able to start to uncover and that it's far more common than we realize?
Yeah.
And then a bigger question would be beg to differ. You just slide into the round scale spearfish, that forever was thought to be the hatchet marlin. You
Hmm.
know, are they similar to longbills, in certain parts of the Atlantic, shortbills in the Pacific? Are they highly migratory or are they generally territorial and just have, there's strays, some of them go on walkabout or swim about and they end up in places they're not normally seen.
I love that you brought them up multiple times. Now, tell us a little bit about the round scale spearfish, aka the hatchet marlin, and its evolution in our fishing space, because it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively newly um, discovered species.
I think it was 2006 it was actually classified as a new species. Prior to that, there were, like all things science, there was hypothesis, and through research and scientific method, they came to realize that it is in fact a species of spearfish. It's not a hybrid marlin, natural hybrid marlin. Um, they cohabitate with white marlin. They, for the relatively, I don't want to say average, but most fishermen at a glimpse, especially if you're just releasing it, not pulling it in the boat, they look so damn close to a white marlin.
They're so
That's why
similar.
tournaments score them the same way, and as they should. I
Hmm.
don't believe that, you know, unless you have a well-trained eye or, can fully distinguish that it is a round scale spearfish for all intents and purposes, it's a white marlin. From a
Yeah,
scoring standpoint, whether it's an official tournament or you're, in my personal opinion, doing scoring yourself, logging yourself a slam,
yeah,
it's a white marlin. But there are some, there's some physiological things where you can discern between the two species. I personally think that they glow a lot brighter than a white marlin. They have these like crazy hues of blue, um, almost like it's like a blue glowworm. I know there's some other guys who feel the same way, and then you can get deeper in looking into how it's brachiostecal, how the gill plate curves, it comes to a hard angle. The distance between the ventral fin and the anus but even then, you're still pulling the fish out of the water. If you're just cutting it
yeah.
and
We're
letting it
flipping
go,
it over, which is not easy.
I score them. I score personally. I just log it up as a white marlin. I think all tournaments should score them as white marlin.
Well, yeah, if you don't, then you're opening up a whole can of worms of potential
Yeah,
protests and drama, because if there's one thing fishermen really love besides marlin and
as the
tuna,
spool
it's
turns.
drama. So,
Um, especially if a white marlin's 100 points and a you have a spearfish for 100 points, just put them together.
exactly.
Save everyone a lot of emotion
Stress.
and words and oxygen and wasting of time.
Seriously. But it is,
Egos can be dented, and they'll never get checked at the door in this industry. So you just have to accept that your ego is going to get dented every now and then, and it happens to everybody.
yeah, so true. So, the whole reason why we even discovered that the spearfish is a specific species is through, that was a studies done at the Mid-Atlantic tournament,
It
correct?
was Mid-Atlantic and White Marlin Open. I think they did that
Mm-hmm.
in conjunction. If I recall, I believe it was Dr. John Graves who's
Mm-hmm.
down there, figured it out, after lots of specimens and studies, just like all conservation has to come from, you know, some fish need to be martyrs for us to better
Mm-hmm.
understand them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, I think it's still in its infancy on how they manage the stock of a spearfish, because who knows how many there really are.
Yeah.
Um, Almost need to, that's where fin clipping, if anybody's, there's a lot of scientists that, they can only get out on the water a lot. So a lot of them rely on fishermen, and you can safely release a fish and clip a fin, put it into a vial, and they can do DNA, and that can help, over time they can build a large enough database that could help figure out, maybe in a given, whether it's New England or Ocean City, the
Mm-hmm.
Mid-Atlantic, does one have more whites than round scales? Is one more balanced evenly?
Maybe even
There's
sex identifying markers
yeah,
on the DNA. Now, when we say fin clips, you guys, it's just a small piece of a fin. Like, it doesn't affect the swimming of the fish or anything like that. It's really just a
yeah, it's a
small.
biopsy.
Exactly. It's a biopsy. I
Yeah.
love that. For sure, but it's so important to be able to get that DNA so that the scientists can probably study these species. And okay, John, what about the fact that a lot of these tournaments, the ones we're talking about, that we're all like, we just want these fish to survive for the long term. We want healthy fish populations, and the science is being really mostly promoted by recreational fishermen and the industry around recreational fishing. um, these tournaments are kill tournaments. Let's
I
talk
have
about
no
that.
problem with a kill tournament.
Let's talk about it. So why is that? How can you tell me that you love white marlin and also in the same sentence or the same breath tell me that you have no problem with a kill tournament?
No different than the old shark tournament that used to go on in Martha's Vineyard that had PETA protesters and everything. 98% of all the sharks were released. That because of high minimums. That's the important thing. You need to set a high minimum. I think you have to do length over weight, or I do like tournaments that scale it that, okay, a 500-pound fish got weighed. It was 108 inches long. Nothing can come to the scale unless it's called 110 inches. I'm going to use blue marlin. Um, that prevents people just from killing fish for the sake of having the spectacle of weighing the fish. Now, we all love backing into a weigh station. You can feel like a rock star. You got a crowd. You got a gantry. There's a certain
There's
energy and
potential
vibe
for
to it. It's
money, a
awesome.
big check, changing the lives
So
of the
I have
people on
no,
board.
you can legally kill a billfish if it's within a minimum federal regulation, and the amount that are killed on a daily basis is not enough to affect the population like improper commercial fishing practices.
Mm,
Um,
which are seen in
and
so many different places.
marlin's an edible fish. It's not a bad tasting fish. It makes great ceviche, poke. You could smoke it. I would be a hypocrite if I said that there was an issue with killing marlin for a kill tournament that has proper regulations set while also still supporting the bluefin commercial fishery.
Yeah.
I believe that there is a happy medium between commercially harvesting fish, recreationally harvesting fish, and on the recreation side, whether it is for a tournament or whether it is for your own personal consumption. I
Hmm.
believe the tournaments should have higher minimums lengths than what the regulations say. Now, sure, it
Hmm.
may slow down the scales a little bit, but they're doing their part as we are all stewards towards the environment that we all make a living from and enjoy as both occupation and passion. Or do the scale part, the scaling of the size. Day one, you know, what's white marlin going to be? 67 inches, I think. 66 or 67 inches short length. If a fish comes in that weighs, now you run into a couple pounds between an inch and length can be different, but that's all part of it. I think you need to find a way to get it to where people aren't just coming in with the fish. Like you can't have I've seen some instances in some blue marlin tournaments where someone comes in, they weigh like a 325-pound fish, like 400-pound minimum. Like sure, it's got the length, but use your own eyes, and if you can tell that
Hmm.
it's a skinny fish for its size, just cut it loose. Now I know it's different when that fish, even if it makes it 401, a daily might be a six-figure check. So
Yeah.
it's a hard, it's a romantic conflict of oneself and making a decision on that, but there's no easy answer. But I have no problem with kill tournaments. I'll sling some steel as much as I'll sling a tag.
Quote of the day. I real quick, I like that you said you started it off comparing it to a shark tournament with a specific stat, but that stat can really be attributed to most of these tournaments, is the fact that 98% of the sharks were released. And that's the
Hmm.
same thing when you look at the White Marlin Open,
Yeah.
the Mid-Atlantic, that what you're getting actually is not only a huge economic surge, right? But you're getting a massive amount of citizen science,
Hmm.
because every single one of those fish are reported, and we know how many fishermen were on the water, we know how many fish were released that day, how many fish were seen, maybe not seen, but how many fish were caught that day. And that comes in and just supports so much knowledge and science in itself. And then you have the 2% that get brought back to the dock, and like we already touched on, these tournaments have been collaborating with scientific institutions for years and years and years.
Scientists
And
need dead fish to learn more about, their various morphologies, anatomies, and whatnot. And these are basically donations. The meat can still be harvested and kept for the people on board, but otoliths are so important to all fish species on aging them. And there's no way that scientists, they're either going to rely on dead discard bycatch from a longliner or a trawler of some sort, or they can be at these tournaments and just get these fish that are also very freshly dead, incredibly well preserved. So there's a lot of study that they're able to do, not just on otoliths. They could pull, do ocular studies on their eyeballs.
mhm,
There's the various fluids that are in between spinal columns that'll help them crack codes on the fish, organs. If they are females, they may have roe. They can look at the reproductive organs. There's incredible scientific benefit to an animal dying, as much as
mhm,
there is to it being tagged and released and preserved.
mhm. Exactly.
So you really
Eh,
can't argue one way or the other without being a hypocrite. You have to support both.
yes. That was something that was really challenging for me for a long time. The not growing up in the fishing space, not growing up around hunters, or we never harvested our own meat at all in my family. And it was something I like was very, and still am very sensitive to death and animals dying. I bow hunt, I bird hunt, and I fish, obviously, and every time it's never easy to kill something. However, like with going giving you a little like look into my background, right? But the kill tournaments were really challenging for me when I first started because I'd never been involved in one, and I had never, from the outside looking in, it really just looks like we're glorifying these magnificent animals' death,
Hmm.
and it's like, like you see this
On the surface,
beautiful,
it looks that way. It looks very rah
yeah,
rah. Look what I
it's
killed! Like put it on the pegboard.
It's hanging next to me. Look at me. I'm smiling and happy, like dead fish. Look how beautiful it once was, kind of thing. But when you look at it and you really dive into the culture and the fishery itself, it's not even like I mean, there is obviously a part of it that is like that. What you see is definitely what you're getting. But also, there is just so much more. And I think that, and that's part of the story that I really want to share with the world is the fact that the recreational fishermen, we are the ones that are devoting our entire lives to these fish. Like we love these fish more than
I'd say as
anyone
a whole is
else.
hunters too. Hunters and
Mhm.
fishermen are by and large the largest conservationists and stewards for their environments because their lifestyle, profession, hobby, passion. If you fish them out or hunt them out, you don't get to enjoy it anymore. And
Mhm.
there has to be a healthy respect for the animal. I have no problem harvesting anything
Mhm.
as long as it's done with respect to the animal. It's not killed in vain. It's not wasted. You know,
Exactly.
there you can utilize every single part of an animal, even if that's also discarding it into the water for crabs. Crabs got to eat too. There's
Yeah.
that cycle of life. No different than the woods. You leave the entrails in some areas if you're allowed to, and coyotes and raccoons and varmints and insects. It's all cycling back. So there's nothing wrong with taking an animal. If you want to get in the nitty gritty of it, I mean, it's just as primal as it gets. But
Mhm.
you need
Primal.
to still be a steward and protect the resource, source, conserve it, and help maintain it and even grow it. And
Yeah.
hunting is wildlife management, so is harvesting fish. You can have too much of a species, and we're going to get an issue with sustainable yield can be too low, and it can also be too high. And now we've got ecological imbalance in a fishery um, due to not harvesting stuff enough, or harvesting too much of a fish's predator, and now you get too much of a smaller predator or forage fish, and there's imbalance. And
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest trick to it all, is maintaining this harmonious balance of in the wildlife kingdom of harvesting and not harvesting.
Exactly. And the more information we can gather and the more data we can gather, the better we can manage a
Yeah, make more
population and
sound
species.
decisions.
Exactly. For game management for the future.
Hmm.
I think
So
it's
it's okay
amazing.
to tag and it's okay to gaff. I have no problem with either one. I mean, gaff is just a curved conservation stick sometimes. Just don't gaff and release unless it's going into your fish box.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't gaff and release. Yes, please don't gaff and release. I have a question for you. I've eaten blue marlin
Hmm.
um on which was smoked, thank God, because I don't really enjoy blue marlin, but smoked it's pretty good. And then I've eaten spearfish in Madeira that was so good. I had it mostly just
Hmm.
raw, made poke, sashimi. We did some seared. It was amazing. And I was blown away because after my blue marlin experience, I just thought billfish wasn't good. But that's when I
Blue
realized
marlin's
it
usually tough because
actually,
you're getting them big.
yeah. Well, this was in Costa Rica. So it
So it's
wasn't
probably a
like,
little smaller. Yeah, a lot of
yeah,
the restaurants, small restaurants in the various coastal towns in Costa Rica are a lot of them are serving marlin ceviche,
yeah,
whether it's blue, black, stripe. And it's all
exactly.
tasty. I mean, white marlin's
Hmm.
delicious. Sashimi,
Yeah.
crudo.
So
It's crudo.
that's what I
It's
wanted to
very
ask you.
good.
Exactly. So, there was such a big difference between the blue and the spear. I think it was a long bill. It was a long bill spearfish, and I'm curious. What I've never had white or stripe. Have you had? I'm sure you've had white marlin. Have you had stripe marlin?
Mm-hmm. They're both
What is
very
the
good.
very? Yeah. What? Tell me about it.
It's a lighter meat, more similar to a sailfish.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice little pink hue to it. Thin sliced is crudo. I mean, I'll put it right up there with yellowtail, flounder. It's
Yummy.
really tasty. Same if you make a ceviche or a poke. You can smoke it. Everything if smoked right makes a great fish dip. I
Mm-hmm.
personally, in the rare instances that we do harvest one, and usually it's if it's a big one of legal size and it's doesn't seem that it's gonna survive a release for a variety of reason, or if it gets clipped by a mako, which we do run
Yeah.
into up in New England. We'll then keep it, and I personally I love it as ceviche or crudo is my favorite, just thin sliced and have at it. It's pretty good. And it's funny you can
So
feed it
good.
to some people, and they'll think it's something else, and they tell them it's marlin, and funny watching the wave of emotions go through. They're realizing they like it, but they're now emotionally
Kind of cruel.
conflicted that they ate a billfish. Kind of a cruel
But
trick. Should
yeah, I
probably
mean,
tell them
we
in the
are
first place.
we are pretty emotionally conflicted people, I think. Honestly, for the most part. But that's the thing with the blues. The blues I've consumed haven't been very big. It's been like somewhere under 300 pounds. Only because they were injured in the fight or something like that happened. They weren't going to make it, and we didn't want to waste the animal. So
The
it
only
was
blues
just
I've
like,
eaten
okay,
are
well,
big ones, like 600 or so. And
but
it's
they
and
were
we
tough.
and
They
we've
were
made
even
we've
the
made
smaller
poke
ones.
from it, but it's better smoked when they're
Hmm.
big. And again, it was just the fish died. It wasn't even a tournament intentional harvest. It was just it didn't survive the fight and didn't want to send it down to the bottom as a mud missile. So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
took it in, and it was fine. It all got consumed, which
Yeah.
is all. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. In this day and age too, with vacuum sealing and you know smoking, there's so many different ways to properly preserve a fish. Where if it's large enough, you have so much that you can hold on to it for a set amount of time and continue to enjoy it long after it's been in the past would have been expired.
Yes, it's so true. Another thing is in the Gulf of Mexico, where you have big, big blue marlin kill tournaments. Um, we have a guy that does something really cool that I thought was pretty great that I met in Biloxi, and he'll go around with a big ice truck and collaborate with the University of Southern Mississippi. I had um, I had Jeremy on a while back to discuss blue marlin science in collaboration with Bill Fishing Tournaments. That was really cool. But he comes around with his ice truck, and they like cut up the marlin when they're done taking all their biopsies and samples from them,
Hmm.
and then put it in the ice truck, and that meat goes towards all of these like rehabilitation
And like
keeps
food
for,
banks, and
well,
that's
food
awesome.
banks, yes, but like rehabilitation for bird sanctuaries
Oh, so feeding the
and
animals good, healthy, whole food.
exactly, and
Oh, I
zoos
like that.
and yeah, exactly, aquariums, all sorts of stuff. And he just goes around the southern states and donates all this meat to the rehabilitation of all these
Oh man,
animals that are going
I
to
can
go
tell
back into
people
the
to start
wild.
doing that in New England, like just
It's so cool.
local animal shelters, dog
Hmm.
rescues. Oh, that's awesome. If you had, I mean, that's a great way to, you got my wheels turning now. Could
I
even think if you
know.
have expired stuff in a freezer that's freezer burnt, you could still cook that and donate it to animals. Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's a
definitely.
really cool endeavor that he does.
Yeah, and I mean, it's such nutrient rich meat, and a super super easy way to donate and give back to wildlife and to the communities without needing to, go through, cuz when you're looking at food banks, you obviously have so like all these grading systems
And
that you need
health
to make sure of,
department
right?
codes and
Exactly.
regulations. It can
Exactly.
actually sadly be very just
Wasteful.
inhibitive of doing.
Mhm.
Sadly, they
Exactly.
used to do it with the Oak Bluffs Monster Shark Tournament for a few years, and then health departments got all got their undies in a bunch, and
Yeah.
it was like it's perfectly healthy food, but it wasn't following HEPA, whatever
USDA.
their guidelines
Yeah.
are for temperatures and whatnot. It was really unfortunate because it allowed a lot of food shelters and you know other organizations like that provide their patrons with some really great food that they otherwise probably normally don't see there.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. So I thought that was just incredible. And yes, I'm glad I got your wheels turning, because I'm sure there's so much potential for that in all of these different communities
Hmm.
that are fishing. So just want to throw that out there.
I like that one.
But well, John, I have taken up nearly 2 hours of your time, and I know you're busy, so I can definitely, we'll start to wrap this one up. But when do you think the Skillie Project? I know it's pretty loose right now because it depends on what the fishing's going to look like this summer. But when are you hoping to release, I guess, deploy the tags for this
Uh,
2025
July
year,
and August.
July and August?
July and August, possibly early September. Um, but July and August will be our peak months. Generally, when we see the larger ones, because we're focusing on a specific size class. We need to. They'll usually potentially start showing up early July and can be around as late as early September. So hopefully they'll show up and we'll get out there and tag often, and hopefully we tag out. Use a hunting term for conservation. Um, tag out. Hopefully we tag out pretty quickly. But I think
Yeah.
we're gonna try to do a bundle of tags in July and then a bundle of tags in August to see if there are, in fact, potentially two different migrations. Do we have an early push of fish? And then do we have a secondary push? Even though they're all the same size, are they two different bodies that are moving together? So that's our goal right now is to split our tags for the 2 months and, hopefully get them all out.
That's so exciting. And if our listeners want to follow along with that, is there any way they can follow along with the project itself?
Yeah, there's the skillieproject.com. They can follow along. They can donate. Any donations done through the Skillie Project page are automatically earmarked through TBF to only go to supporting the Skillie Project, so it doesn't go to a general fund at all. And then we have the Skillie Project on Instagram. We're just getting going with that, but that'll end up having some really good data points and some real time stuff once we get rolling, and that'll can allow some people also to communicate directly with those of us on the team.
That's so cool. And you guys, I will tag, link all of that stuff in the description below. So check it out, the Instagram page, the website. If you want to give, every little bit helps, every little bit counts. And we really, really appreciate your consideration in that. John, what are you most looking forward to for your 2025 season?
Getting 14 tags out into Skillies. Hopefully just some good weather. You know, New England can be, last year, July was very windy. The year before, it was really wet. So hopefully we get
Yeah,
Bermuda highs early and often, and we get 8 weeks of some pretty awesome weather and some good fishing. No
that's
hurricanes.
awesome. No, oh my gosh. I'm gonna knock on wood. I feel like I've knocked on wood more in this episode than I've ever in any other episode before. But one last question for you, John. What is it that keeps you coming back to the water?
I'm living a childhood dream. How can I not want to do this? It's the best job I could possibly have until I decide to grow up.
I love it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. You guys, if you liked this episode, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with anyone you think might find it interesting. If you want to contact John, find him on Instagram. I'll tag his information below as well. John, thank you for sitting with us. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast. Good luck and good fishing.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks for everything you do for our community. I'm really excited to be a friend of yours.
Well, hopefully we'll circle back some around this time next year, and we'll have some, maybe have some cool data to share.
Definitely. Y'all stay posted for that. Thanks so much, John.
Take care.